What up, everyone? This is Mr. Lord Dark Professor Dark Joker with this week's video. This week will be an edition of History Behind Fiction. And what we're going to cover today is going to be the history behind Assassin's Creed 3, Liberation, and Rogue. So I'm going to go over some of the historical figures involved, the groups, and the events, you know, that were involved with the story of these games. So with all that being said, on with the video. First, I'm going to go into the historical figures involved that were characters in these games. George Washington. So he lived February 22nd, 1732 through December 14th, 1799. In his youth, he studied math and land surveying and became a draftsman and map maker. He was a major in the Virginia militia from 1752 through 1758 and was promoted to lieutenant in 1754 when it became the Virginia Regiment. He fought in the French Indian War or the 7 Years' War, depending on who's given the name. And he joined Edward Bragg's expedition in 1755. Obviously that expedition failed. And he represented Frederick County in the Virginia House of Burgesses from 1758 through 1765. He helped organize boycotts against the UK during the lead up to the American Revolution. He was commander in chief of the Continental Army from June 19th, 1775 through December 23rd, 1783, and he presided over the Constitutional Convention in 1787. He was the first president of the United States from 1789 through 1797. He was the only presidential candidate to ever receive 100% of the Electoral College in 1788 and 1792 elections. And some of the events he preceded over during his presidency, he had the Whiskey Rebellion from 1791 through 1794, the Northwest Indian War from 1785 through 1795, and he set president by retiring from presidency after 2 terms, which every president except for FDR followed out of courtesy until the passage of the 22nd Amendment in 1951. So, basically it was a courtesy for a while. No one did more than 2 terms until FDR got 4, and they decided to pass the amendment. Then the $1 bill and coin have his face on it. Samuel Adams. So he lived from September 27th, 1722 through October 2nd, 1803. So during his life, he was not really good businessman, so he had some money issues. And he later became the founder of the Sons of Liberty in 1765. To protest against the taxes levied by the British. He fled Lexington after being warned by Paul Revere, and he served in the Continental Congress from 1774 through 1777 and 1779 through 1781. He, due to his Puritan faith, he promoted virtue amongst politicians. Like he wanted, politicians to actually have morals. Kind of a crazy concept. You know, and he was an anti-federalist and was against the Constitution until the Bill of Rights was ratified in 1791. He was the president of the Massachusetts Senate from 1782 through 1785 and 1787 through 1788. He was the third lieutenant governor of Massachusetts from 1789 through October 8th, 1794, and he was the acting governor for October 8th, 1793 through October 8th, 1794. And then he was the fourth governor of Massachusetts from October 8th, 1794 through June 2nd, 1797, and the beer brand called Samuel Adams is named after him. Benjamin Franklin. So he lived from January 17th, 1706 through April 17th, 1790. He went to school for 2 years before working for his father Josiah and apprenticing under his brother James at a printer. He wrote letters for New England Courant under the alias Silence Dogood after James refused to let him publish anything. And due to some of the issues between him and his brother, he ended up fleeing to Pennsylvania, and he joined the Freemasons in either 1730 or 1731, and he ended up becoming a Grand Master in 1734. He founded the Union Fire Company in 1736 and the American Philosophical Society in 1743. He signed the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. He was the 21st Chief Clerk of the Pennsylvania Provincial Assembly from October 14th, 1736 through May 13th, 1751. He was the first president of the University of Pennsylvania from November 13th, 1749 through May 24th, 1754. He was a member of the Pennsylvania Provincial Assembly from Philadelphia County, Pennsylvania from August 13th, 1751 through October 11th, 1764. He was the Postmaster General of British America from August 10th, 1753 through October 31st, 1774. He was the Speaker of the Pennsylvania Provincial Assembly from May 26th, 1764 through October 11th, 1764, delegate from Pennsylvania to the Second Continental Congress, May 10th, 1775 through October 26th, 1776. He was the president of the Pennsylvania Society for Promoting the Abolition of Slavery from April 23rd, 1787 through April 17th, 1790. First United States Postmaster General from July 26th, 1775 through November 7th, 1776. U.S. Minister to France from March 23rd, 1779 through May 17th, 1785. U.S. Minister to Sweden from September 28th, 1782 through April 3rd, 1783. Sixth President Pennsylvania from October 18th, 1785 through November 5th, 1788. And the $100 bill has his face on it. Annual during his life, he was famous for having a lot of affairs, and like there was a whole issue of like his son being a loyalist. Like, William, basically his son William was the royal governor of Jersey, and of course, he was a loyalist. So that led to a lot of tension between them. And basically they never reconciled. So that was like a sad part, of Benjamin Franklin's life. Paul Revere. He lived from January 1st, 1735 through May 10th, 1818. He was a silversmith apprentice under his father, Apollos Revere. He enlisted in the colonial militia during the French and Indian War in February 1756 and was commissioned as a second lieutenant. But he left to take over his father's silver shop once his father died. He joined the Sons of Liberty in 1765 after he had to become a dentist in order to cover the cost from his silver shop failing. He warned Samuel Adams and John Hancock about the British coming for them on April 18th, 1775, and was captured by the British. He joined the Massachusetts militia as a major in 1776 and was promoted to lieutenant colonel later that year. He was the Grand Master of the Freemasons of Massachusetts from 1795 through 1797. William Dawes. He lived April 6, 1745 through February 25th, 1799. He was elected as a member of the Ancient Honorable Artillery Company of Massachusetts on April 8th, 1768, and was appointed second sergeant in 1770. He helped warn patriots during the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, and he was commissioned as a second major on September 9th, 1776, and served as a corps master during the American Revolution. Samuel Prescott. He lived from August 19th, 1751 through 1777. Not much is known about his life. What little we know about him is mostly to do with the Midnight Ride, where basically, he was meeting a female companion of his, and then later joined Paul Revere and William Dawes, after they left Lexington, and basically Prescott joined them on the way towards Concord. And possibly he died in the British prison. There is a Dr. Samuel Prescott that I guess had died in British prison in 1777. Most people, historians, believe that this is the same Prescott. There's no confirmation since there's so little known about Samuel Prescott. John Hancock. He lived January 23rd, 1737 through October 8th, 1793. He was a merchant during his life, before he joined the Sons of Liberty, and he was accused of smuggling, to avoid paying taxes to the British. And, during the Midnight Ride, he had to flee Lexington with Samuel Adams, and very famous. One thing he was famous for is his signature on the Declaration of Independence. Basically, he had the biggest signature on it. You know, a very well-known signature. And then he was the first president of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress from October 7th, 1774 through May 2nd, 1775. He was the fourth and seventh president of the Continental Congress from, you know, over the course sometimes within November 23rd, 1785 through June 5th, 1786. And he was the first and third governor of Massachusetts from May 30th, 1787 through October 8th, 1793, with of course some hiatuses within those. Israel Putnam. He lived from January 7th, 1718 through May 29th, 1790. He was nicknamed Wolf Putnam and Old Wolf Putt after killing the wolf. He fought in the French and Indian War, elected to the Connecticut General Assembly, and founded the local chapter of the Sons of Liberty. He fought in the American Revolution. He led the militia at the Battle of Bunker Hill, unanimously chosen as a general of the Continental Army. He lost the Battle of Long Island, but possibly saved George Washington's life due to his efforts during the battle. Patriots lost trust in Putnam due to some of his failures, and a stroke basically ended his military career. Benjamin Talmadge. He lived February 25th, 1754 through March 7th, 1835. He joined the Brothers of Unity while attending Yale University and graduated in 1773. He was a superintendent of Wethersfield High School from 1773 through 1776. He was appointed a major in the 2nd Continental Light Dragoons on June 20th, 1776. He founded the Culpeper in 1778 to gather intel for patriots. He was a postmaster of Litchfield, Connecticut from 1792 through March 4th, 1801, and was a Federalist member of the U.S. House of Representatives for Connecticut, March 4th, 1801 through March 3rd, 1817. He was the first president of the Phoenix Branch Bank from 1814 through 1826. Mason Weems. He lived October 11th, 1759 through April 23rd, 1825. He was an ordained minister in the Episcopal Church, and things most famous for is writing the novel A History of the Life and Death, Virtues and Exploits of General George Washington. Like, there's a lot of questions on how much of that, some of the specific details in that book are true or not. Like, there are questions, like, we don't know. Like, but basically, this is what he's famous for writing the biography of George Washington. Marie Joseph Paul Yves Roch Gilbert du Moutier de la Lafayette, Marquis de Lafayette. Yeah. He lived September 6th, 1757 through May 20th, 1834. He enlisted as a major general uh, on December 7th, 1776 to be among the French officers sent to help the Continental Army, and despite France canceling plans to help the Patriots, he decided to go himself. He fought at Brandywine, Valley Forge, Albany, Barron Hill, Monmouth, and Rhode Island. He returned to France in 1779 and was placed on house arrest for disobeying King Louis XVI, but he was treated as a hero. So, like, it was kind of like a slap on the wrist. He helped get France officially involved in the American Revolution and later fought at Yorktown. He was a Knight of the Order of St. Louis, promoted the emancipation of slaves, and was appointed Commander-in-Chief of Parisian National Guard on July 15, 1789. He was exiled during the French Revolution and captured in Austria in 1792. He returned to France March 1st, 1800, after Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte restored his citizenship. He served in the Chamber of Deputies, and he kept peace during the Revolution of 1830 and had Louis Philippe made king. Benedict Arnold. He lived January 17th, 1741 through June 14th, 1801. He served in the Connecticut Provincial Militia for 13 days in 1757 with the alleged but unconfirmed desertion in 1758. He worked as a merchant but resorted to smuggling due to the Stamp Act and joined the Sons of Liberty. He was appointed a captain in the Continental Army in March 1775 but became disgruntled during the war. He started spying for the British in 1779 and got caught in 1780 before fleeing and joining the British Army. He lived in England, New Brunswick, and the West Indies during his life after the American Revolution. His name has since become synonymous with the word traitor due to his actions during the American Revolution. Francois Joseph Paul Comte de Grasse. He lived September 13th, 1722 through January 11th, 1788. He became a page for the Knights Hospitaller Grand Master the Antonio Manuel de Vilhena in 1734, and he joined the Order of St. John. He fought the Ottoman Empire and Barbary pirates. He joined the French Navy in 1740 and fought in India during the Seven Years' War. He served in the American Revolution with battles of the Chesapeake and Yorktown being his notable exploits. He lost the Battle of St. Kitts in 1782 against British Admiral Samuel Hood, leading to a court-martial. He became a commander in the Order of St. Louis and a Knight of the Knights Hospitaller, you know, after the war, and he joined the American Society of the Cincinnati. Thomas Jefferson. He lived April 13th, 1743 through July 4th, 1826. He was a colonel in the Virginia militia during the American Revolution from 1775 through 1776. He famously wrote the Declaration of Independence. He was a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses from May 11th, 1769 through June 1st, 1775. He was a delegate from Virginia to the Second Continental Congress from June 20th, 1775 through September 26th, 1776. He was a member of the Virginia House of Delegates from October 7th, 1776 through May 30th, 1779. He was the second governor of Virginia from June 1st, 1779 through June 3rd, 1781. Uh, he was a delegate from Virginia to the Congress of the Confederation from June 6th, 1782 through May 7th, 1784. Um, Minister plenipotentiary for negotiating treaties of amity and commerce from May 7th, 1784 through May 11th, 1786. Second U.S. Minister to France, May 17th, 1785 through September 26th, 1789. The first U.S. Secretary of State from March 22nd, 1790 through December 31st, 1793. He was the second U.S. Vice President from March 4th, 1797 through March 4th, 1801, and the third U.S. President from March 4th, 1801 through March 4th, 1809. Some of the things he observed, he presided over during his presidency was the first Barbary War from 1801 through 1805, the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, and he sponsored multiple westward expeditions with the Lewis and Clark expedition being the most notable one. And later in life, he you know founded the University of Virginia, and there's the whole issue about some of about like some of his descendants. So basically, there was a slave named you know one of the slaves who was like his wife's half sister. Basically, like his father-in-law was basically had a pleasure slave, and that led to conception of a child. The child was a slave and became a due inheritance. Jefferson inherited that slave, and Sally Hemings named the slave. Basically, whenever Jefferson was around her, she ended up getting pregnant, and allegedly Jefferson was the father of her kids, and DNA evidence has proven to that for that to be the case. And issue was that Hemmings was 14 and 16 when the relation was going, and and Jefferson was in his 40s. So there was yeah, no excuse for that. Like that's like the biggest stain on his career, on his life, is that the Hemmings were, while it wasn't as controversial in that time period, there's no excuse. It's still freaking disgusting what he did. Anyway, but he, did a lot, signed the Declaration of Independence, founded the University of Virginia, and and yeah, so yeah, it's a very complicated legacy. Charles Lee. So he lived March 6th, 1732 through October 2nd, 1782. He got a lieutenant's commission on May 2nd, 1751 in the 44th Regiment and served in the French and Indian War under Edward Braddock. He was George Washington's second in command in the Continental Army after Artemas Ward resigned. He was court-martialed after disobeying Washington's orders during the Battle of Monmouth and he dueled Lieutenant Colonel John Lawrence during the aftermath of all this. And he ended up being fired by Congress after sending him a letter that, however it was worded, Congress did not like it. And basically they said, basically were like, you're done. William Johnson. He lived 1715 through July 11th, 1774. He was a first baronet. He traded with the Iroquois tribes after immigrating to the British colonies. He served in King George's War, 1744 through 1748, the colonial front of the War of the Austrian Succession from 1740 through 1748. And he served as a major general under Edward Braddock during the French Indian War to negotiate with natives. He was the British Superintendent of Indian Affairs from 1756 through 1774. He founded Johnstown, New York in 1762, and he served during Pontiac's War from April 27, 1763 through July 25, 1776. John Pitcairn. He lived December 28, 1722 through June 17, 1775. He joined the British Marines in 1746 and was commissioned as lieutenant. He served as a captain in the French Indian War and was promoted to major in 1771. He led the British advance party at the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and he died of wounds that he got during the Battle of Bunker Hill. Thomas Hickey. He was a combat field servant to William Johnson during the French Indian War. He was a private in the Commander in Chief's Guard for George Washington during the American Revolution. He was jailed for counterfeit money, and he told a fellow prisoner named Isaac Ketchum that he and his allies planned to defect to England. And he was tried and executed on June 28, 1776 for mutiny, sedition, and treason, and there were unconfirmed reports of an assassination plot against Washington. Benjamin Church. He lived from April 24th, 1734 through 1778. He was a member of the Sons of Liberty. He was a deputy to Provincial Congress and member of Committee of Safety from October 7th, 1774 through July 19th, 1775. He was the first U.S. Surgeon General from July 27th, 1775 through October 16th, 1775. He was court-martialed after a letter declaring his loyalty to England was intercepted by patriots and was imprisoned until January 1776. He was allowed some movement under guard, and he returned to Boston in 1778 under bond before sailing for the Caribbean and disappearing. Nicholas Biddle. He lived from September 10th, 1750 through March 7th, 1778. He joined the Royal Navy in 1770 and left in 1773 to join Captain Constantine Phipps's expeditions to the North Pole. He commanded the Franklin 1775 for Pennsylvania. He was commissioned as a Continental Navy captain for the Andrew Doria in 1775 and was later given command of the Randolph on June 6, 1776. He died during the Battle of Barbados in a fight with the HMS Yarmouth. Edward Braddock. He lived January 1695 through July 13th, 1755. He was commissioned as an ensign, the 2nd Regiment of Foot Guards of the British Army on October 11th, 1710, and promoted to lieutenant of a grenadier company in 1716. He was promoted to captain 1736, major 1743, and lieutenant colonel on November 21st, 1745. He fought in the War of the Austrian Succession, notably during the siege of Bergen op Zoom in 1747. He was promoted to colonel of the 14th Regiment of Foot on February 17th, 1753, and was promoted to major general in 1754. He led the Braddock expedition during the French Indian War and died during the Battle of the Monongahela, with George Washington overseeing his burial. Gilbert Antoine de Saint Maxent. He lived 1724 through August 8th, 1794. He moved to New Orleans in 1747 and joined the French Army in 1749, later being promoted to colonel and commandant of the Louisiana Regiment in 1753. He sided with Spain during the Louisiana Rebellion of 1768 and was imprisoned when rebels took over the city. He served during the Gulf Coast campaign on the American Revolution. He was named Commandant of the Militia of Louisiana, Lieutenant Governor of the provinces of Louisiana and West Florida, and Captain General of the new Bureau of Indian Affairs of Louisiana and West Florida in 1782. Jean-Jacques Blaise d'Abbadie. He lived February 4th, 1726 through February 4th, 1765. He joined the French Navy and appointed Director General of Louisiana in February 1763, overseeing the end of French rule in Louisiana while England and Spain took over. Antonio de Ulloa y de la Torre Gurol. He lived January 12th, 1716 through July 3rd, 1795. He joined an expedition to South America to help determine the size and shape of the Earth and helping defend Peru during the War of Jenkins Ear from October 22nd, 1739 through October 18th, 1748. And he discovered platinum during his expedition, and he called it platina or little silver. He was captured by the British during their return voyage to Spain, 1745, but was returned to France after he befriended some British scientists. He was the first Spanish governor of Louisiana from 1763 through 1768. Louis Joseph Gaultier de la Vérendrye. He lived November 9th, 1717 through November 15th, 1761. He reestablished Fort Laurenpas in 1736 and built Fort Lorraine in 1738. He was possibly one of the first Europeans to cross the Great Plains and see the Rocky Mountains after his voyage from 1743 to 1744. Him and some of, like, I think it was his brother, were, it's not known it actually is him. He actually was involved. Like, there's some unconfirmed information, but he's believed to be one of the first Europeans to go into that area. He was a commandant of 3 posts, you know, including during his time of service in the 7 Years' War. His ship, the the August, sank off of Cape Breton. George Monroe. He lived from 1700 through November 3rd, 1757. He became a lieutenant in Otway's regiment, the 35th Regiment of Foot, in 1718 and was promoted to lieutenant colonel by 1750. He led the British failed defense during the siege of Fort William Henry and was attacked by Native Americans after the French promised to let the British leave peacefully. So that basically the French promised to let the British go. Basically they were impressed by Monroe's, defense. They promised to let him go. The Native American some of the Native Americans allied with the French, uh basically wanted to go and kill them. Now there was some language barriers that prevented some of them from knowing that the British were supposed to be spared, but the French basically were not able to contain the Native Americans from attacking the British. Christopher Gist. He lived from 1706 through 1759. He was George Washington's guide through Ohio country in 1753. He served in the French and Indian War under Washington and Edward Braddock. James Cook. He lived from November 7th, 1728 through February 14th, 1779. He apprenticed as a shop boy for grocer and haberdasher William Sanderson, 1745. That career was not necessarily good for him, so he ended up becoming a merchant Navy apprentice for John Henry Walker, who was a friend of Sanderson. Like those two, they knew Sanderson well, so that kind of how Cook started to work for him. And he studied the various skills that he needed to become to captain the ship. So like a lot of the navigation, the mathematics. Like Cook studied all that during his time as an apprentice. He joined the Royal Navy June 17th, 1755, and served during the Seven Years' War. During his exploration career, he charted Newfoundland, Australia, New Zealand, and the various islands in the Pacific Ocean. He and including Hawaii, which during a dispute with some native Hawaiians, there is a dispute over a cutter, so like a type of a ship, and he died during that dispute. Lawrence Washington. He lived 1718 through July 26, 1752. Obviously, Lawrence is not as famous as his brother. So he was awarded the captain's commission during the War of Jenkins Ear on July 10th, 1740, and was appointed adjutant and major in spring 1743. He was a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses from 1744 through 1752. Now I'm going to get into the groups that were involved in the stories of these games. The Sons of Liberty. This was founded in 1765 by Samuel Adams to combat the taxes on the 13 colonies that the British were levying, partly to pay back the debts they owed from the Seven Years' War. And with the Stamp Act and the Tea Act being amongst the major ones, you also had the Sugar Act and all that. And basically, one of their mottos was no taxation without representation. And the states that the Sons of Liberty operate in were Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Maryland, and Virginia. And they executed the Boston Tea Party in response to the Tea Act. Notable members included, but not limited to, Samuel Adams, Benjamin Church, John Adams, Patrick Henry, John Hancock, and Paul Revere. The group disbanded in 1776 due to the American Revolution was going on. So a lot of them were busy, either being politicians or being soldiers. The Tulpa Ring. So this was a spy ring formed in 1778 by George Washington and Benjamin Talmadge. They acted as spies for Washington to help gather intel for the Patriots. Some notable members included Abraham Woodhull, who was nicknamed Samuel Culper, um, Robert Townsend, who was nicknamed Culper Jr., James Rivington, George Smith, who was nicknamed SG. He was kind of I guess, a replacement for Townsend. Philip and Nathaniel Rose, Stella Strong, Agent 355. Which interesting about Agent 355 is that it's one of those we don't know who it is. It's basically there were some women involved, like Anna Strong being probably the most notable one, and it's believed that one of them was Agent 355. But we don't know exactly who is. Hercules Mulligan was a member. Then you had John Cork, which is an alias of an unidentified member. Like we don't know who John Cork was. And so the reason we don't know a lot is because basically Washington kept so much about the Culperine under lock and key. Like the public did not know. Like the Culperine wasn't really discovered as existing until the 1930s. Like 1920s, 1930s, like around that time was when basically Culperine was actually public knowledge. Like it was classified for like a while. Like basically it was like I don't know, it was like an official sense. It was more like basically I think no one talked about it. So and due to like way technology was then, basically you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have computers, so basically like it was on paper. So you had all these ciphers, so a lot of people didn't know that there's so many that didn't know that cult ring was a thing. And so for over it wasn't until like over 100 years later that people that basically was finally acknowledged, which is fascinating. Like that secret lasted so long, like which makes it a pretty effective spy ring for it to gone basically be a secret for that long. I'm going to go over the events associated with these games. The French and Indian War, aka the Seven Years' War. So the French and Indian War lasted from May 28, 1754 through October 7th, 1763. The Seven Years' War lasted from May 17th, 1756 through February 10th, 1763. So the reason you have two names has to do with, the fronts in which the battles were fought in. So basically in the 13th colony in North America, it was called the French Indian War. Like, and that was primarily like the British versus the French, and you had the Native Americans, different tribes helping different of those two factions. And the Seven Years' War was basically the war everywhere else. You know, British and France, you know, Britain and France had like they were the main two, and they had allies. And so for the British, so Prussia, Hanover, Hesse-Kassel, Brunswick, Wolfenbüttel, Saxe-Gotha-Altenburg, Würzburg, Ansbach, Schaumburg-Lippe, and well, let's see, Portugal and Russia for a period of time helped the British. Now in 1763, Russia switched sides for a brief period of time and then became neutral. And then besides Russia, France was helped by Spain, Sweden, Bengal, and along with the Habsburg monarchy and their various allies within the Holy Roman Empire. And the whole conflict started with George Washington's attack on Fort Duquesne, and the Bragg expedition, Louisburg expedition, and the siege of Fort William Henry. Um, they gave France some early victories, but Britain gradually gained momentum in the war and eventually won with the Treaty of Paris being signed in 1763. France gave Canada to Britain and Louisiana to Spain in the aftermath of the war. Boston Massacre. So this occurred on March 5th, 1770. So colonists were protesting against taxes levied by Britain against the 13 colonies. A standoff started between colonists and the 29th Regiment, which was led by Captain Thomas Preston. An object was thrown at Private Hugh Montgomery, and that knocked him down. Lean, and he dropped his musket, but once he got up, picked up his musket. Basically, he decided to shoot his musket in retaliation, even though no one ordered him to do so, because Preston did not want aim to fire. He like Preston wanted them to basically he wanted that to be a last resort. But once one bullet was fired, it was inevitable that a bunch of bullets were going to fire. So, other members of the regiment started firing. Some of the Americans were killed. And the aftermath, the 29th Regiment, all of them were arrested. And while most of them were, and one of the things that's ironic, so John Adams, who was a member of the Sons of Liberty, actually was like their lawyer, was defense lawyer for the regiment. Basically, Adams was able to get you know, most of the soldiers, acquitted. Two of them were convicted of manslaughter, and four of the colonists, were arrested. They were tried and acquitted. And yeah, that this was a big moment that led to the American Revolution. The Boston Tea Party. This occurred on December 16th, 1773, and so the Sons of Liberty were retaliating against the passage of the Tea Act on May 10th, 1773, and the Townshend Act. And so what the Sons of Liberty did, they disguised themselves as Native Americans and snuck onto British ships and dumped tea into the Boston harbor. And in retaliation for that, the British passed the Intolerable Acts. And yeah, that just escalated things, eventually leading to the revolution, of course. The Midnight Ride. So this occurred on April 18th, 1775. Uh, Paul Revere and William Dawes warned patriots about the British coming, and got Samuel Adams and John Hancock to leave Lexington. And Samuel Prescott joined Revere and Dawes on the way to Concord. And three of them were intercepted by the British on the way there. And Revere was captured while the other two were able to escape. Now, of course, you have that poem about this ride, the Midnight Ride, Paul Revere, where, some historians say Paul Revere is given more credit than he deserves. And I guess Prescott and Dawes aren't given enough credit, which is fair. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, all three deserve a lot of respect for what they did, because what they did helped give us America. The American Revolutionary War. This started on April 19th, 1775, ended on September 3rd, 1783. It started with the Battle of Lexington and Concord. You know, basically, the Midnight Ride, prepared the Patriots for it, and that led to the big battle. And some of the notable events during this war include the Battle of Bunker Hill on June 17th, 1775, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. July 4th, 1776, the birth of our nation. The crossing of the Delaware from December 25th through 26th, 1776. The Battle of Trenton on December 26th, 1776, which was the immediate aftermath of the crossing of the Delaware. The Battle of Valley Forge from on September 18th, 1777. The Battle of Monmouth on June 28th, 1778, which was that the Battle of Monmouth was kind of like the aftermath of the whole Valley Forge encampment, where basically Washington's force became very battle hardened as a result of that winter and became very good at fighting. And of course, the Battle of Chesapeake, September 5th, 1781, the Battle of Yorktown, which lasted from September 28th, 1781 through October 19th, 1781. Of course, that stands for Cornwallis's surrender that basically made it very obvious that the British were going to lose. And so France, Spain, and the Dutch Republic helped the Patriots in the war, while the Hessians, which was they were like German mercenaries, they helped the British. And the war ended up ending with the Treaty of Paris. And that led to America officially becoming an independent nation. And yeah, we got America. And that's it. Did y'all like this video? Did you dislike the video? Make sure to put all down in the comments. Are there any facts I got wrong? Anything I'm missing? Put all down in the comments as well. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Look forward to the next video.